Okay, so as you know, the change in the exams happened because there was a change in the curriculum, and now, at least for some part of the training, the two pathways, which used to be allergy and clinical immunology, are together, and the training is together. So the decision was that the paper, the part one, which is the requirement for both pathways of training, to be sat. So following discussions, we launched the pilot, which is the process that the college follows in order to change exams. This didn't happen in spring, and we've explained why. It happened in September. And I know there was confusion as to who could or could not sit the pilot exam. And the college regulation and approach is that people who have met the standards to pass the exams are the people who can make a judgment how good a paper is. And so it was that with that kind of view that people who have passed part one previously were allowed to do it, rather than just all the candidates, which I know in some ways disadvantages the ACI trainees, because these trainees have never done an exam before. But I guess this is why now that the pilot and the model answers is open and public, it's your kind of exposure to what the exam will look like before actually doing it. And obviously that's why we're offering this Q&A session. Just to make a couple of points for the pilot was obviously one paper and not two papers, which was done for practical reasons, i.e. It would have been very difficult to persuade people to basically have one whole working day off to sit a pilot exam. And also there were some reservations because people wanted to prepare before they sit the exam. Okay, they passed the exam, we wouldn't make them resit the exam if they failed the pilot, but still, which I think I can see the point, because you can only judge an exam if you have some kind of background knowledge, which is why basically we wanted people who have advanced in their training to do it. So I have been told that the GMC has approved this process now and the pilot, so we are ready to go with a real exam. And that's all I had to say.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks, Sophia. So I think maybe we'll kind of start answering some of the questions that come in. We've got a few at the moment, and I can see the first one came in from Alex, and he asked, is there a difference between the content in the two papers?
Well, historically, yes and no. So historically, the first paper was basic science, and the second paper was more clinical. We tried to make it a little bit more interesting, if you like. So we have added clinical parts to the paper one, which is predominantly science-based. And the paper two, I suppose we still have kept the theme that is more clinically based. The other thing to add is that clearly the requirement for the exam is to be fit for purpose, is to match the curriculum. So we can't go off piste and ask things that they're not in the curriculum. But just to clarify up front, I know people who are going through the ACI pathway, they are not exposed to lab unless they want to, i.e. during their training, go and have some lab training. But it is the expectation, not only from the exam, but also through competencies of training, that these trainees as well will have some basic laboratory knowledge, and they will be able to interact with the lab and to interpret laboratory results. So bear that in mind if you see some of the questions or sub-questions of the pilot and the future real exams that will be laboratory based questions.
Perfect. Thanks, Sophia. Hopefully that answers the question. So we've got another one asking, is there specific weightage of allergy/immunology component in the papers?
The answer is no. So each question will be weighted approximately 20 marks. There will be the one thing to bear in mind is that now all questions are mandatory. So you have to answer 5 questions in each paper. The only thing that when we do the process of angofing is that whether we should, so we treat clinicians all the same, ACI or ACLI. So the pass mark will be the same for these 2 groups. Sometimes if we think that the clinical component of a question is harder for the clinical scientists, we may actually adjust the pass mark for the clinical scientist. I have to say we do try for this part of the exam, part 1 or ACICE exam, that the marking is the same, because we do think that there's clinical knowledge that the clinical scientists need to know as well. But it all depends on the type of the questions. Sujoy and Sonia, if you want to add anything, or please feel free to jump in.
Yeah, so you were mentioning about this second question, which was, is there any specific weightage of allergy immunology component in the papers? So just to add that this is an exam being taken by 3 different types of candidates, isn't it? There's ACI, ACLI, and then there is the clinical scientist. So it's difficult to have a specific weightage of 50-50, but we will try and keep immunodeficiency, allergy, specific allergy with a component of immunology in all the questions. So there will be a mixture of different kinds, but it will be part 1 level. It won't be part 2 or viva level. But I think the ACI candidates might face difficulty in the beginning, which is because it's the first exam, isn't it?
Okay, I think that covers that question. There was another one that came in asking, previously in the part 1, candidates were able to choose 4 out of 5 questions to answer. Is this still the case? But I think, Sophia, you just said that candidates will have to answer all 5 questions. So I think that's covered. And there's another one there. Okay. So we've got a question from Lara asking, how many answers are we allowed to give? For instance, in the pilot paper, in the first question, you asked for 3 of the commonest encapsulated bacteria. She's asking, can we write 5 answers and you'll take the best 3, or can we only answer 3? So
this is not a choice for the examiners. We take the first 3 answers. And if it is not in the first 3, then whatever is in the first 3. Sophia, did you want to add anything else?
Yeah, so what I want to add on this is, if the question asks you for 3 or 5 answers, you then have to give 3 or 5, because if you give more, then the impression we have is you don't actually know, and you throw more answers just in case some of them are actually the correct. And I have to say, this is a short answer question compared to the essay writing before, but it is sometimes obvious if you actually have the knowledge from the way you answer the questions. And for example, if we ask like list 5 immunodeficiencies with X features, and then you give 5 that they appear to us random, or you give more, then the impression is that you don't actually know the answer. And from all the immunodeficiencies, you just put them there just in case you will get something out of it. So although the exam doesn't have negative marking, if our impression is that the knowledge from the way you're answering, that the knowledge is not there, then we may, so if we ask for 3 things and you give 5 or 6 and 2 of them are correct, if the answer appears to be random, then you won't get any marks at all for this question, if that makes sense, if it's clear.
That's fine. Someone has asked, by that logic, are lab-based questions therefore not more difficult for clinicians compared to clinical scientists? So I'm not sure who wants to address that.
So at this part of the exam, the questions we ask that will be suited for clinicians to know them as well. So it's going to be basic laboratory knowledge rather than detailed knowledge that we ask in the part 2 exam.
Sonia, are you back? Are you able to?
She looks she's back, but she may need to keep her camera off for better, I don't know.
Yeah, I think maybe. Okay, let's see what other questions are on. So we have another question. Thank you for all your efforts to sort out the exam. If a candidate passes in January or wanted to go for the part 2, will there be an extension in the application period for the part 2 sitting in spring 2024?
So we've discussed this already with the college. So the turnaround time of so because this exam is going to be the first one out of sync, yeah, we will time the results and the application process in such a way that candidates who failed the part 1, they will be able to resit in the spring diet. And as we have already announced, the part 1 for the spring diet is also going to be out of sync. So instead of end of March, which is usually the time is done, is going to be sometime in April. I can't remember now the precise date.
Sorry, Harry.
Yeah.
Just to say, sorry, let me put my video on. Hi everyone. I think what they're asking about, Sophia, is if they pass this first part 1, can they go on to do the part 2 in the spring session? So I know that we talked quite a lot about the process through the various part 1 opportunities. Can we take the part 2 question back and just have a look at that to see if there is something that we can do for those candidates, and then we'll come back on that in the new year, if that's okay.
Yeah, so that's a good point, and I think it was asked. Yes, thanks for the correction, Joe. And I think yes, because I think there may be 1 or 2 candidates in the country who are very tight with finishing their training, and therefore they need to do the whole exam this coming year. So out of principle, as Joe said, we will have to come back to these. Bear in mind that the practical and the Viva, i.e. part 2, is usually sat later. We will have to bear that in mind for the sake of fairness. But we'll get back to you as per the timing in the new year.
Thank you, Joe and Sophia, for covering that question. So we've got another one asking, how much depth do we need to cover for basic immunology? Is it the same depth as previous historical part 1 paper?
Yeah, so trainees ask these frequently, and especially nowadays the ACI trainees. So my short answer to this is, as an example, is more or less you need to know what is the contents of some basic immunology books, such as the Janeway or ABAS. I think most trainees prefer the ABAS because it's more kind of reader friendly, if you like. I historically always referenced the Janeway, which we immunologists consider these to be basic stuff. Because if you want to go in depth in some of these, then you have to go and read the review articles and so on, which sometimes are helpful for knowledge, general knowledge. And also, I would say for the lab, then the lab questions, some of the elements of the lab questions are not going to be on the basic textbooks of immunology. And this is where then that's part of your training, to provide you this kind of knowledge. You know, you go in the lab, you kind of sit down with people who work in the lab, with consultants who authorize the results, and you know, you kind of take that on board. You acquire this knowledge and skills that way, which is why the ACI trainees now are, that's why all the trainees rotate within immunology and allergy centers. If I give this away, which was usually the question, the way for part 2, but it is in some ways the way for part 1 as well. There are basic knowledge that is there. It doesn't change over time, and we will circulate the questions in a rotational basis. We will ask you about all basic science. But as we have all talked over the years, the examiners, like anyone else, is influence of new science that is coming through, which is usually acquired either via conferences and meetings or good review papers in very high impact factor journals, immunology journals. I mean, just to give you an idea, obviously, we are not going to go and ask you some kind of nitty-gritty details that are in the Nature Immunology, which is very basic science, kind of mouse-based journal, if you like. But we may go and, pick up a review article, to inspire a question from Jackie and so on, or, Nature Medicine, or, Lancet. This is common standard themes, how the examiners will set questions. And it is basically part of everyone's training. You need to be kind of updating your knowledge. And bear in mind, the exam is only one way of assessing your knowledge, is not the only one.
Perfect. So we have another question from Ashling. I'm asking, if the question doesn't specify how many examples to give, should we judge it by how many marks are available for that question?
So normally the question will tell you how many examples to give. It should be clear, but if it doesn't, you can guess it from the number of marks. So either of the two should give you some idea, but you don't have to get everything correct for all the marks. Sometimes the marks are split. And it will be split most of the time if it is a list of items.
Okay, go on, Sophia, sorry.
Yeah, the other thing to mention about this is, I mean, it's not unheard of that sometimes there are some unfortunate sub-questions during the exam. We may got the wording wrong, and therefore what we were asking wasn't obvious to the candidates. And that is actually becomes apparent by the answers. And if we asked question and then we wanted to give us an answer X, and then most of the candidates answered Z, gave us different answer, then we will take that into account into the kind of adjusting the pass mark and so on and so forth. So it's not any, the idea behind an exam is the intention is to pass people, but people have to have the standards to pass it. Because in the past people say, oh, you failed me on this and the other. The examiners don't fail the candidates. If anything, the examiners want all the candidates to pass, because it makes our life easier. You don't have to receive the exam and to be marked again by us. So there is always we've taken that into account. We try, but the good thing about this new thing is we try to do the wording very clear and the answers very succinct and very short. So if, for example, we ask you provide a brief, and we actually move away from like provide a brief, outline of VDJ, BCA receptor rearrangement or something. We try to be very focused on what we are asking you to put down as an answer. And also as a general theme and rule with a new exam, if we ask you to give a description, usually you can do that in bullet points and it shouldn't be more than 3 or 4 sentences long.
Perfect. Thank you, Sophia. So we've got another question. What is the expected wait time between the exam and the results? So Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there is a statement on the website, and at the moment it's flagged as the results to be released or to be confirmed. So we don't have a date as of yet, but I imagine it would probably be within the normal window. I'm not sure if anyone else wants to add anything to that. Sophia.
Yeah, I think we do still need to confirm that. And also, again, as I've said before, what we're trying to do is make sure that we provide opportunities for everyone to be able to sit successive part 1 attempts, just to try and be as flexible as possible. So again, I think that's something that we'll take back and just confirm that as soon as we can in the new year, just to make sure that everybody's clear on that, and then make sure that following that we make opportunities available for further applications if there need to be.
Thanks, Jo. So there is another question about, I think it's specialist registrars, but I can see Sejoy is typing an answer to that, so I'll leave him to deal with that.
I was trying to type an answer, but I don't think there is an absolute early eligibility criteria. Is there, Sophia? It was traditionally said by the end of ST5, you should have cleared the part 1.
Yeah, we say about 1.5 to 2 years into your training to do part 1, but it's very much down to, you know, how and you know, to do the exam, somebody needs to basically be your sponsor. Somebody needs to you know, sign you off, which means, and this is usually your educational supervisor. So this is a discussion you have with your educational supervisor, and if they think you are, and you think you are fit to sit it a bit earlier, that's absolutely fine. The thing is, don't come to the exam, because that has happened in the past, to say, oh, I'll have a go and just see how it looks like. Because if you're not prepared and you fail an exam, it's a failure, and you know, the impact of that is that's that. I think to answer also how many attempts we have, it's 4 attempts. Is that correct, Jo? I think that hasn't changed, unless there are exceptional circumstances. You're only allowed 4 attempts for the exam.
That's correct. It's 4 attempts. After 4 attempts, you can apply for a 5th and 6th attempt, but that goes through our mitigating circumstances panel, where that's considered and council approve those. That's in the regulations and guidelines for candidates to look at. I was just going to also drop into the answer of one of the questions about the earliest to sit the exam. I'm just going to drop a link into the JRCP-TB ARCP decision aid, because that gives you guidance as to when you have to have passed it as well. So it's sort of like the other end. So I'll drop that in now as well.
So we have another question asking, do clinical scientists need to follow the JRCP-TB curriculum, as HSST curriculum hasn't been updated as far as I understand?
Do you want me to take that one as well, Tarek?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the HSST curricula were published by the college some time ago. We have been asking to be able to update them. It's something that we have to do in collaboration with the National School for Healthcare Science. They wanted to do a review of STP, which is a precursor to HSST, and review all of those curricula, which they have done. So I'm very much hoping that we will get the go-ahead from the National School very soon to be able to review all of our HSST curricula, including immunology. But that's why they've not been updated, unfortunately. But we'll keep on the case with that one.
Thanks, Jo. There's another question from Joseph asking, will there be an option to sit the exam at the college, or will it be fully remote? So for the part 1 exam, it is fully remote. It is on test reach at the moment. So unless anyone else wants to add anything to that, I think that should be fine. Are you going to release any more pilot papers after the January exam? I don't think there is a plan, but Sophia or Sejoy, if you want to.
So at the moment, we have to generate a bank of questions. And in fact, we will be asking trainees who have passed part 1 to help us out with that. So at the moment, we cannot guarantee. It's a new exam. And it is, as you all know, the examiners, we do this on a voluntary basis. So that will generate double work for us on like non-existing free time to actually do that. At some point, after we have done 2 or 3 diets and we see how the exam performs, we may want to release some more questions as a, you know, sample questions. The one thing that I have been saying to trainees forums is, you have done through your career, the last exam you have done was the MRCP, or the PACES, whatever it's called now. When I did it a long time ago, it was called the MRCP and so on. And there are several courses for that. There are books that you can read with the model answers and so on and so forth. This exam is never going to be like that, unless it's been taken by an automatic machine that is going to be generated, only because of the logistics and the practicality, and because immunology knowledge just changes as we go. And this is why the style of the questions, we try to do it not kind of regurgitate lists and just knowledge that you go and read. It has to be engaging your brain for decisions making, which is why it's more difficult. So there isn't going to be like, I'm going to go to this course like the MRCP and then I'm going to do the exam. It's just higher professional standards you have to have. And quite often in immunology and in allergy, there isn't a clear-cut perfect answer. Sometimes you have to deal with facts of life. You may not have a definitive diagnosis. You have to manage the patient and the symptoms and so on and so forth. But we will, to answer the question, the actual question is, once we are confident we have enough in the real exam bank, we may be able to release more, questions with model answers.
Thanks, Sophia. Yeah, I think it's obviously very challenging to, upload sample papers and things like that. So we've got another question asking, what kind of feedback will we receive after the exam? Will it be more detailed than in the past?
So we are working with the college on this, because we do think as examiners that the college template for giving feedback is a bit vague, and it could be more targeted and specific. So as you know, the feedback, it comes through your educational supervisors if you are if you haven't passed. But yes, we are looking into that to improve it.
Okay. Another question asking, will a representative of the college be available during the exam? In the previous slide, the only people present were the invigilators, who had no idea how to answer everybody's urgent question about how many questions. So for this one, the part ones are on test reach, and the invigilators are the invigilators that test reach hires. But college staff are available on exam day. So if there are any urgent issues, then obviously we are available to try and help you out. But unfortunately, ultimately, it is test reach who kind of helps out with issues like that. So Joy or Sophia, I'm not sure if you had anything else to add, just because I know you had quite a bit of experience dealing with the part one.
I don't know if so Joy wants to, as a feedback, when that occurred and people were trying to contact me, is my understanding is that the invigilators are left a little bit in purpose in the darkness for the safety and of security of the exam. So they're not related, but I think yourself and Joe may be the best people to answer that.
Joe, I'm not sure if there was anything else you wanted to add.
Yeah, no, I mean, just to say that, obviously we can't, just because it's a test reach system, we can't have staff available directly through the test reach system. It should make it clear in the system how many questions to answer. I know that there was an issue in one of the previous sessions with that, where that information wasn't made available, but that should be there. But as Tarek said, if there are issues, if you can't get your invigilator to answer, for example, or anything like that, then contact the exams team, exams@rcpath.org, or you can call the college and be put through to a member of the team as well.
So I can't see anything else in the Q&A chat at the moment, but there was one question that a trainee emailed me directly. And they were asking kind of a question about diagrams in the papers. So they were just asking, in the part 1 paper, would there be no diagrams, and will it only be written answers?
So, I mean, when we had the old style exam, when and it was written before COVID, we used to accept diagrams or to ask for diagrams because it was a much shorter answer. As far as I'm concerned, there is no technical support via test reach to actually go back to that kind of style of questions.
Yeah, I think that's right. Okay, perfect. There was another one.
I'd just like to add that the type of questions we will be giving, you don't need to draw diagrams. You can do a table if required. It should be easy to do tables, isn't it, Tariq, on the test reach?
I would have to check that just to be doubly sure.
Yeah, so if you just make sure the video on test reach just has that particular bit, how to do tables, because there's another candidate asking before, I think.
Yeah, and
the video
see.
for test reach doesn't show how to construct tables, so I find it difficult to just figure out in the exam.
Okay. Yeah, that's coming on the Q&A as well.
But I have seen candidates doing tables in the answer papers, isn't it, Sophia? So tables are possible.
Yes, or and you know, they don't need to be structurally a table, but if you outline,
Actually,
yes.
answer in the form of a table, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can want to do it. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I think when we do upload this to the website, then we might have to just add a bit more information around tables. Yeah, I can't see anything else at the moment. Okay, someone's asking, can we copy and paste the questions in the answer part? It's difficult to remember the multiple stems and scroll up and down. So I think there is an option to copy and paste. So that should be possible.
Does it not, from what I remember now, I may be wrong, marking the papers, I thought you have a space to answer each question immediately underneath the question.
Yeah. That's my understanding of it, yes. So there shouldn't, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Okay, I think what I'll do is I'll try and get some information from the website and just type that in. I can't see anything else at the moment. There was another question that a trainee emailed in, kind of just asking about the format of the pilot paper and whether all the future papers will follow that format. So I think they kind of noticed that there was one allergy and 4 immunology questions in the pilot, and they were just wondering if that's always going to be the same or if that will vary. I'm guessing that it probably will change.
Yeah, I mean, in that respect, there isn't no fixed kind of number of question one way or the other. We try to cover as broad spectrum of the knowledge and the curriculum in each exam as possible. But there's always going to be a little bit of imbalance. And for your information, from the feedback we had from the pilot, some people said there was too much heavy science, basic science, which I don't think it was. And some people said there's too much allergy in it. So, you know, it depends who you ask. But there will always be a mixture of everything, and we'll try to be balanced. But, you know, sometimes, yeah. I think with the new format also it's easier to cover a broader spectrum of the curriculum in each sitting rather than just you know, with essay writing you kind of focus on one area only or two.
Thanks, Sophia. So there's another question about technical difficulties. So should there be any technical difficulties on the day of the exam? How should trainees address this? So Test Reach does have a function where you can contact the invigilator and they should be able to help you. There's also be a contact number. And and that will help kind of address any technical issues that candidates do have. Again, failing that, college staff are, they're available on exam days. So if you're really having trouble reaching test reach, then you can get in touch with us, and then we'll kind of connect you to them and try and resolve any technical difficulties. Someone else is asking, do you need to pass all questions to pass the exam? Or is it your overall mark?
So I'm going to repeat this once more for people who have not grasped it. With the new format of the exam, you will have to answer all questions rather than 4 out of 5. So you are answering all the questions. And usually you may be able to fail a question by a margin, because if you have done well in the others, you will be able to compensate. So that's not a failure. But if it goes by on one, then it is a little bit difficult to rescue yourself. It depends on the angle. The other thing to also highlight here, which was always the case, even with the previous exam, is we also set egregious errors. So if we set a question and we think some of the answers have to be there, otherwise you don't have the knowledge, you're not fit. And so on, then basically then you fail the exam. It has to be something major. To give you an example, if you don't know the basics of how you manage SCID, or which is an emergency, or how to manage anaphylaxis or something, and which actually anaphylaxis is a basic medical science, is not even an immunology or allergy kind of thing, then these are considered, and the college always had these, especially for the part 2, but that applies for part 1 as well. And usually you have to have, it has to be something major.
Yes, I think that the question that should be sufficiently answered. There's another one asking, how is the pass mark determined?
So the process is called anchoring, and it's a close marking. And effectively, the way we set the pass mark is by, generally speaking, I'm not going to go into the details, is considering the borderline candidate for passing. And it is actually very meticulous, the way we do it, because we sit down and see how many marks is in each sub question, and how many of these answers or bullet points or whatever, out of your 5, if we ask for 5 things, 5 clinical diagnoses, how many of these would a borderline candidate will be able to answer? So this is how we say, we don't set the pass mark with the kind of the very good clinical candidate. We set the pass mark with the borderline one.
Perfect. So we have another one asking, how long does each paper last? I believe it's 3 hours and then an extra 15 minutes. So that's right, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, perfect. And I can't see anything else at the moment, so I guess we'll give everyone a chance if there is anything else they had.
Tariq, can I ask you, I presume because the college asks for feedback immediately after the candidates have finished the exam, that will continue to be the case, right?
Yes, yeah. So after the exam, yeah, go on.
Yeah, that is this, and obviously because this is a new exam, we would very much appreciate feedback, because we have to follow rules and templates, but as you know, as with medicine and everything in science, it's a real evolving thing, so you will help us by giving us feedback.
So the other thing also, Tariq, is to change some of the information on the website, saying that the papers are different. First paper only relies on basic immunology. So if you just change that bit of information, it's easy for everyone to know.
That's fine. Yeah, sorry, I just saw that. So I'll get that changed. And just to kind of go back to what Sophia was saying, yeah, we do always ask for feedback after the exam. But as she mentioned, it is really important that we get as much feedback as possible, because this is a new exam format. So kind of getting that information in and using it to improve the experience for candidates is really important. So you'll probably get an email from me at some point asking for feedback. So thank you. Fatima's asking, are both papers on the same day?
Yes, they are on the same day. I don't know how, do you leave 1 hour? How much of a break do you leave the candidates to have in between the two papers?
I'm not sure, but they usually get about an hour's break if all goes well. So there is time. It's not back to back.
And also to preempt another question is you have to pass both papers to pass this, the ACICE exam. If you pass one and you fail the other, I'm afraid you fail the whole exam, and then next time you have to do 2 papers again.
And then there's another question asking how has previous feedback been taken on board? So, I mean, after we did the pilot paper, we did receive a lot of feedback, and that was taken, very seriously. Obviously, Sophia and Sejoy had to look at that as well, and obviously there were some comments about the balance of the paper and things like that. And I mean, I'm sure Sophia can add a little bit more, but that is being considered.
So I'm going to make a reference to the last time the real exam happened, where there were some technical issues, and you did feedback through to us through the feedback mechanism of the exam, and we did take that into account, how we marked candidates. If we think the pass mark needs overall pass mark adjustment, we do that. We consider people who answered all 5 questions instead of 4, how would they would have performed otherwise, and so on. So we take everything very seriously, and even without technical issues, as I said before, if we think one bit of the exam hasn't performed as we would like to, we either scrap it or adjust the pass mark and so on and so forth. So it's never like rigid and this is it. And as I said, we always try to pass the candidates. Usually, it is most of the time, just to give you a bit of feedback on the other side, it is a quite straightforward, people who pass and people who fail. For borderline candidates, we elaborate quite a lot, and in order to be fair, basically. It is laborious, but as far as I'm concerned, fair process.
Thank you, Sophia. So we've got about 5 minutes left. So I guess we'll try and answer as many questions as we can. Someone's asking, are typos taken into account? Some may be slow in typing and make errors. So I think the answer to that is yes. Okay,
so in order to ask a little bit, to answer a little bit this question, I mean, it is a little bit how much basic science. As I said, if you have never done any immunology or allergy before, which is what I did, because when I set off to start my training, the curriculum was actually meant to be 1. It was 6 months down the line that I was asked that you have to choose one or the other. So that's that. So as I said, if you start from scratch, you go and buy yourself a Genway or an Abbas and sit down and read it all. Okay, and then this is why you have the hitchhikers training days to assess, to address specific parts of the curriculum, and also kind of give you more of a clinical flavor or a laboratory flavor. The London trainees have their own kind of forum where they do monthly teaching. You can have, and we did say, we discussed with the people who deliver with Sam Chi, the hitchhikers, that we are happy to come and talk to you about the exam again, if you want to. I think so that's my answer to the question of how much basic science do I need to know. Yeah, you need to know some basic stuff about transplantation. You may seem this is irrelevant, but it's basic immunology. You have to know about MHC class 1 and class 2. You need to know how T cell development happens, how B cell development happens. We're not going to ask you all the nitty-gritty detailed DNA details and all the enzymes involved. but you need to know basic knowledge. Even for the allergies, that's, you know, B cells and T cells are participating in your immune responses. And, you know, some basic lab stuff, which I have said many times, the people who fail the exam is because the clinical, even for this part 1 part of the exam, is because the clinical scientists are not exposed very much to the clinics, and because the medics, I mean, doesn't apply so much for this part of the exam, have not gone and done enough of some kind of lab exposure or, you know, clinical knowledge and experience. So it's a little bit difficult to answer how much basic science. So that's why I'm saying, if you know ABAS or if you know Janeway, you should be able to pass this exam.
I've just received an email with another question, so hopefully we should be able to answer it quickly. Are abbreviations accepted for example, names of molecules?
Broadly speaking, it depends on what it is, but I saw in the chat NF kappa B. So yeah, if somebody puts NF kappa B, we all know what it is. Or you know, LRBA. I think if you ask half of the consultant immunologists in the country or allergists what LRBA stands for, they may not be able to answer. So some are basics. Yeah. So we want, and it depends also the time is going to be ample. The other thing to mention is just to give you where the bar is set to be. You've seen the pilot. We think the pilot was an easy paper with ample of time to answer all questions. The one thing that is going to be, you will probably find a little bit more difficult with this kind of format of the exam is that sometimes it's, you either know it or you don't. There is no in between. You can't, it's like essay writing. Sometimes you may know a little bit of this and a little bit of that. So some of the questions are going to be like this. Some others, especially kind of clinical management, obviously, then it comes to experience. Sometimes it is pure experience, you know, or some basic knowledge.
There's one more that's just come in. Did the candidate sitting the pilot paper pass? I think, I mean, yeah, I'll let you answer that, Sophia.
Well, we had 3 people. So we were aiming for 6 people to sit the pilot for various personal and technical reasons. We had 3. 2 of them passed and 1 didn't. And I believe it doesn't really matter because it's a question of, I think the person who didn't pass was a consultant.
It's more just that the pilot paper it's not about who passes and fails. It's more about just getting the feedback and kind of testing the exam system. Yeah.
So I think it worked well. But we all, and this is why we set the pass mark. So if one paper, and it will vary from time to time, if we think that I can't remember what the pass mark was for the pilot, but if we think that a paper, an exam is easy, then the pass mark is going to be, you know, 60 or 70%, or for some questions, not the whole paper. If we think it's more difficult, it's going to be sitting more towards the 50% pass mark. But as I said, it's not, it is done in a very detailed way rather than a very generic setup, the pass mark like that.
So I think we've just come up to 10:30, and there were quite a few questions, and looks like we've managed to answer all of them, so that's good. So again, yeah, thank you to everyone who has attended.
Before we close, can I just ask if Sujoy or Sanya want to make any more comments to her?
Sorry, I think
We
we're still
still
having
can't hear you,
difficulties.
Sanya.
Yeah, sorry. You can type it in the chat if you wanted to. So Joy, did you want to add anything? Just while Sanya's typing. Anything else?
Not from my point of view at this moment.
Okay, so she
Nothing
said
from me. Thank you.
she said she couldn't fix the problem, but nothing to add. So yeah, all good. So yeah, thank you to everyone attending, and obviously to Sophia, Joy, and Sonia for being here, and also to Joe for answering all the questions. Hopefully we've covered everything, and just a kind of just a quick note that we will upload this to the college website. So if there is anyone who's missed it, or if you wanted to recap, then you will be able to do that shortly. And yeah, thank you very much.
Good luck, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.